That's a huge problem because scientists have not been able in 70 years to reproduce any natural process which would repeatedly produce these building blocks, and then that they would complexify into a structure which then in the end would be a
It's just an argument from ignorance.
cell. No, you have here
evolved,
following problems. You have water paradox, you have the information need paradox, you have the single biopolymer paradox, you have the probability paradox, and you have the asphalt paradox, which is the biggest problem. And I can quote here for you. It is clear that non-activated nucleotide monomers, which are the basic building blocks of DNA, of chromosomes, can be linked into polymers under certain laboratory conditions designed to simulate hydrothermal fields. However, both monomers and polymers can undergo a variety of decomposition reactions that must be taken into account because biologically relevant molecules would undergo similar decomposition processes in the prebiotic environment. So we are not talking here about an argument from ignorance, but an argument from a negative, that is that biopolymers left by their own, rather than complexify, they decompose.
So I think I can man the argument a little bit now. I think the atheist materialist side is saying wait for science to provide an answer, the science of the gaps. And the theists are saying God designed this and we could probably understand this later too on some level, but ultimately it was designed.
There is no other rational explanation than design to explain the origin of life.
Why?
It would indeed cover the different directions that this dead inert matter appears to be taking way beyond its dead, mindless course. But if we're going to ascribe anything to nature without any limits, then I guess anything based off of the framework is available as a possible scientific naturalistic explanation. I would find that unappealing, though, because that verges on giving nature any capability with no limits. I tend to like the framework that at least give a distinction between nature, supernatural, that sort of thing. More options, more open-mindedness.
Sounded like you were using the black swan fallacy, Otangelo. You were saying something
Nonsense.
about. Well,
so do you expect that one day you will find a green swan which wears Gucci sunglasses and handbags and makes Fabergé eyes? Do you expect that?
No.
Me neither.
Good. So your black swan fallacy is a fallacy then. Because there are things which you will never expect to occur if we've not seen them.
Well, you make a good point about...
I don't say it's impossible. I'm just saying I don't expect it. And?
Well, you don't expect that life comes from non-life by natural means either. Well, at least not if you know the science.
Well, that I expect will probably happen.
Oh, yes, that's a blind belief because science has no clue how that could happen. I just gave the reason.
So therefore it's not possible?
There is a huge,
surely you're not saying it's not possible.
Yes, I'm saying it's not possible. There is a huge selection problem because there was no natural selection prebiotically, and you need to select actually the complex biopolymers which are needed to start life. Like, for example,
what's the argument that it's not possible?
The argument would be basically...
Well, with all due respect, physicists, I do appreciate your input, but I'd like to hear Otangelo's answer, please.
Okay, now, for example, amino acids, there are over 500 known
different before you finish, Otangelo, I'll let you finish uninterrupted. But remember, just keep this in mind. My question isn't one about likelihood or probabilities. It's about necessity. So when you answer, please keep that in mind and give me an answer why there's a contradiction within life from non-life. Go ahead.
There is no necessity for amino acids to group, sort out from hundreds and hundreds of different amino acids, join into 20 which are used and which are life essential, and then they have to be left-handed. There is no selection mechanism. Then amino acids, they are made by a very complex metabolic pathways in the cell, these pathways have also to emerge to start life. There are some amino acids like tryptophan, which requires very complex enzymes, and they are not extant naturally on the prebiotic earth. So, why would nature complexify in that direction to start producing basic building blocks like RNA, DNA, amino acids, phospholipids, and carbohydrates, if by themselves they would simply stay there on the ground and then decompose rather than complexify into information-bearing DNA strands and proteins, which are molecular machines, and membranes, which are full of portals like the membrane portals, the membrane proteins, which permit things to come into the cell and other things to get out, and so forth. This is kind of complexity which we as humans, with all our intelligence, we cannot produce that. Our factories, they are ridiculously simple compared to the complexity even of the most basic cell. So thinking that this kind of complexity could be the result of just random natural forces is just plain irrational.
Are you finished, Otangelo?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear anything about how it's impossible. I'm sorry. And you concluded with, I don't see anything.
It is impossible, and I said it. Why? Because basic molecules, rather than complexify, they decompose. Okay, RNA decomposes in about 40 days, and RNA is a complex molecule made of the base of the backbone, which is the ribose, the phosphate. They have to be joined in the right way, and you need the right bases, the pyrimidines and purines. And if you don't have the right bases, you cannot have Watson-Crick base pairing, and you cannot have the fine-tuned forces, the hydrogen forces, which bind them together. You cannot have chromosomes. You cannot have an information-bearing molecule.
But we can simplify this even.
Man, that's just claims, right? There's no contradiction that you've shown at all.
We can simplify this even further philosophically, though. The thing
I mean,
is,
I could grant everything that you said, and then that still doesn't show why it's impossible.
Philosophically,
you're saying that like these molecules break down.
In 70 years of abiogenesis experiments, it has never been shown how RNA or DNA or the other molecules could emerge by natural means.
Right. Good.
Okay?
Good.
That is
good.
not an
Point
argument
taken.
from ignorance.
Point taken. Therefore, what?
Therefore, abiogenesis is a failed hypothesis acknowledged by the best scientists.
No, that's not
the
therefore. No. No, that's false.
Well, the thing is,
just because in 70 years they haven't figured out how to do it, that means that it's impossible to do it? Are you serious? Surely you're not saying that. You can't be saying that. Yes. Okay, well, that's just an argument from ignorance.
So
it's an argument from knowledge.
Simply invoke
it's an argument from knowledge that it is not
and
possible.
Get around that by having faith that science will one day deliver. So we need to go even deeper and talk about the experimental framework, and let's make predictions.
Physicist can't help himself, even if he's like interrupting another Christian. He just can't help himself, can he?
I like what Otangelo did. He's like, oh, it's not an argument. Excuse me. Can you?
First of all, you're incredibly loud. Just with Tom for a little bit.
I'm trying to. I'm really trying to. Physicist, I mean, would you please? I'm asking you really nicely. Please. I would like to talk to Otangelo, and Otangelo would like to talk to me for a little bit. We don't want to talk to you right now. Can you please let us talk? Please?
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Okay, ask your question, Tom.
So I think you were saying it's not an argument from ignorance; it's an argument from knowledge. And I see what you did there. That's interesting. Can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? You asked me a question. I'm telling you, right? That seems really cute. It reminds me of when you say to your old man, he says that it's like 70 years old or 60 years old or whatever, and then he retorts with, "No, I'm 70 years young." That's all I think
Okay.
you did there.
Okay. Let me suppose I tell you, Tom, please have a look in your wallet. In your wallet, are there some coins in your wallet? And you open your wallet, and there are no coins in your wallet. Then you will tell me, oh, there are no coins in your wallet. When you say that, do you say that based on knowledge that there are no coins in the wallet, or based on ignorance?
That's knowledge.
Okay, good. So the exact same thing and rationale applies to abiogenesis research. Abiogenesis research has tried in 70 years to find abiotic roots, to explain how just the basic building blocks of life could have emerged by natural means, and all experiments have failed. So that is evidence of absence. That is not an argument of ignorance. It means that it is not possible by natural means. And science
evidence of absence
to
is look.
somewhere
That's the
else.
case. That's the case when you expect to find something, right? But the domain of like the nature of how something happened is not all inclusive, right? It's not a finite area you can check like a wallet. For example, when somebody engages in scientific research of this manner, like how would you determine that like you've explored all of the wallet? Well, in the case of the wallet, we can just, it's a finite space, right? We can just look in all the corners and areas. And if we're expecting to find something in there like coins, right? If we don't find it there, that's evidence of absence, right? But how could you possibly determine that you've explored all the areas of the wallet, which in this case, the analog is all avenues of scientific possibility?
We can make a simple statistical calculation and see what the odds would be to have
well, odds unless there's the odds unless there's zero don't help you, and this is something that I've repeatedly tried to tell you, but you don't seem to understand it.
Well, I already explained to you that this is just a thought experiment, but the practical evidence shows that any biopolymer above 40 nucleotides would disintegrate. So, and even single nucleotides or amino acids or whatever, these molecules, they do disintegrate. That's the evidence that we have. So we have evidence to the absence that by natural means, molecules can complexify into the complexity which is required to have.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it impossible. That makes it less likely, right?
Well, I mean, there is a threshold which we can apply here, and it is not about less likely. It is simply that conceptually it doesn't work.
Why? Your task is to show how it's impossible. That's your claim. Your claim was that it's impossible, right? All you're showing is you're talking about probabilities over and over, which probabilities don't get you to not possible. I don't know why you don't understand that.
Well, I told you already, and I think you are not understanding that when biopolymers, rather than to complexify, go the opposite route and disintegrate, that alone is evidence of impossibility.
Yeah, evidence. Evidence meaning that it makes the hypothesis more likely, right? Not impossible.
Well, Tom, if you have so much faith that eventually natural causes have that capacity, be happy with it.
Okay. So you haven't provided the justification of why this is impossible.
Take it whatever it means to you.
Okay. I have one last question. You said that you acknowledged that rocks could be created with the purpose of simply being a rock, for example, by people. If I handed you two rocks and one was created with a purpose and the other was not, right? It's just a rock, as you say, not intelligently designed. Would you be able to tell the difference? If so, how?
No, probably not.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, Fitzis. You're free to go do your thing.
So, Otangelo, I just wanted to ask you, so how would you define scientific possibility? Is it just to say, I think you guys touched on it with Tom a few times, it's just to say based on the amount of evidence, the probability or likelihood or unlikelihood of a certain theory?
Yes, I mean, based on the empirical scientific exploration of these things, that we can come to an informed conclusion. I can quote you here from proeminent abiogenesis researchers, what they are saying in regards of the topic.
No, I just want to hear what you mean by it. That's what you mean though, right?
I just told you, based on 70 years of experiments, science has come to the conclusion that there is now basically a limit where it doesn't make sense to try to find answers if they are already on the table. And as I wanted to quote here some of the proeminent scientists, what they are saying, like Jack Szostak, he says, it is virtually impossible to imagine how a cell's machines, which are mostly protein-based catalysts called enzymes, could have formed spontaneously as life first arose from non-living matter around 3.7 billion years ago. And in special, Eugene Koonin, which is very well known, says, despite many interesting results to its credit, when judged by the straightforward criterion of reaching or even approaching the ultimate goal, the origin of life field is a failure. We still do not have even a plausible, coherent model, let alone a validated scenario for the emergence of life on Earth. He wrote that in his book, The Logic of Chance, in 2012,
Sure.
so not 40 years ago.
Can these paradigms being...
I can quote you.
Like
Can these
I can
paradigms
quote you,
change?
Steve Banner. He says, discussed here is an alternative approach to guide research into the origins of life, one that focuses on paradoxes, pairs of statements, both grounded in theory and observation, and that taken together suggest that the origins problem cannot be solved.
Suggest.
Yeah, I wasn't really saying that as a challenge. I'm not that interested.
But this is just like the steady state universe versus not the steady state universe, right?
Understand why they are saying this, then you will not still hold a candle in hands and hoping that someday the miracle will happen and life will spontaneously be shown to emerge from the natural world. That simply will not happen.
I mean, we could be arguing.
You're appealing again to statistics when you're supposed to be supporting a necessary claim. I don't understand it. Here we go again.
Not only statistics. I told you, biopolymers.
Well, why would you look if you have something else? If you're not only proposing statistics, and you have the actual necessary entailment, then just skip the statistics and go straight to the entailment.
I can give you many reasons. Would you like to hear them?
If you have the entailment, I don't want to hear the statistics because I would just have why it's necessary, and then you'd be done. You wouldn't need to give me any statistics.
I can give you the entailment, but you are not listening because you are close-minded, Tom.
Every time I've asked you, look, your answer is going to be like, it's just going to start something like this. It's not going to start with probability or the science says that it's probably this or the it seems this or it points to this, right? Your answer is going to start with, Tom, it's impossible. It could never be that life comes from non-life because this, right? But I don't ever hear that.
I can give it to you. And I have told it to you several times, but you are not listening, Tom, because
all right, perhaps it's just me. Okay, fine. It might be me, just I'm not listening. So I'll listen to you. Give it to me.
I can quote you here from Signature in the Cell from Steve Meyer, chapter 10. He says, "There have been roughly 10 to the 16th power of seconds since the Big Bang, and due to the properties of gravity, matter, and electromagnetic radiation, physicists have determined that there is a limit to the number of physical transitions that can occur from one state to another within a given unit of time. According to physicists, a physical transition from one state to another cannot take place faster than light can traverse the smallest physically significant unit of distance. That unit of distance is the so-called Planck length of 10 to the 33 centimeters. And therefore, the time it takes light to traverse the smallest distance determines the shortest time in which any physical effect can occur. This unit of time is the Planck time of 10 to the minus 43 seconds. Based on that, we can calculate the largest number of opportunities that any physical event could occur in the observable universe since the Big Bang. Physically speaking, an event occurs when an elementary particle does something or interacts with another elementary particle. Since elementary particles can interact with each other only so many times per second, at most 10 to the 43rd power of times, since there are a limited number, that is 10 to the 80th power of atoms of elementary particles, and since there has been a limited amount of time since the Big Bang, 10 to the 16th power of seconds, there are a limited number of opportunities for any given event to occur in the entire history of the universe. This number can be calculated multiplying the three relevant factors together. The number of elementary particles times the number of seconds. The number is 10 to the 139th power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whatever
I'll give it. I'll even up
number,
it for you. I'll give it. What was the 10 to the 39th?
10 to the 139th power.
Okay, I'll give you 10 to the 1,000. That still doesn't make it impossible.
Okay. That makes it impossible because it is beyond what the universe is capable of doing.
That doesn't follow.
The odds to have the smallest living bacteria which we know of, Pelagibacter ubique, have a minimal proteome with 1,350 proteins.
Look, we understand the math. I'm giving you 10 to the 1,000. Otangelo, I'm giving it to you. I grant it. Now, let me ask you a question now. I listened to your entire explanation, right? If you buy only one Powerball ticket, and I've asked you this question before, right? And the odds of winning the Powerball are 1 in 250 million, and you only buy one ticket, does that mean it's impossible for you to win Powerball?
If the number is beyond 1 to 10 to the 139th
You're not
power,
answering my question. You're not answering my question.
Answering your question. You don't let me answer. If the odds to buy
I gave you the odds.
ticket,
I gave you the odds. I gave them to you already.
It's impossible.
What? You
It's
cut out. I
impossible.
didn't hear you. It's impossible?
Yeah.
Well, how do you explain people buying one Powerball ticket and winning the Powerball?
Well, the lottery odds of the Powerball in the United States is 1 to 10 to the 8th power. It's 1 to 300 million.
Mm-hmm.
Odds to have a minimal proteome is 1 to 10 to the
Look, you're answering a different question. I'm asking you about the Powerball. I'm asking you about the Powerball.
I told you about the Powerball. The odds.
You
to
said
win
it
the
was
ticket
impossible.
Wow.
You said it was.
You're interrupting me.
You're being impossible.
Okay. I'm mistaken. In regards of the Powerball, it's possible because the odds are 1 in 300 million. In regards of the smallest proteome, the odds are 1 to 10 to the 722,000. And you have in the entire history of the universe, you have 1 to 10 to the 139th power of possibilities. That number is far, far beyond what is the realm of the possible.
Yeah, I don't see why that matters. If it was impossible, the possibility would be zero.
Whatever. Tom,
That's
don't think whatever you want to. I mean, you don't understand. Sorry.
right. Okay.
don't understand. I told you already. This is just to give an exemplification, but the mere fact that biomolecules disintegrate rather than to complexify is what you need to know to acknowledge.
That doesn't change anything either. That just makes it less likely.
Tom, if you want to believe in the impossible,
You haven't shown it's impossible. I would believe. I wouldn't believe in the
Okay.
impossible if you showed me it was
okay,
impossible.
whatever,
What the probability
whatever. You don't understand.
He doesn't
Wait, but
understand.
we determine the
I
probability
hate that dismissal
life
because it's
or
not.
in general. I'm just
You
saying.
might be
It's
talking
his
past
lack of
each other,
understanding
but-
because you can't explain it very well. Because I
Yeah.
don't understand either.
You don't
One in
understand
something
either?
seems
What
like that's a
is it?
chance. Like, and the chance is
what is
quantified,
it?
right? It's 1 in X.
What is it? What is it that you don't understand?
Why it's impossible. Because all you give is a probabilistic support for why it's improbable, but not impossible.
If I am
Mhm.
telling you that the odds are 1 to 10 to the 10 trillionth,
I gave you
I would
1 to
say
1,000.
all-
Remember? I'll give you like
yeah,
double that.
I know. Okay, good. So I'm telling you, Tom, the odds to have life from non-life by unguided means is 1 to 10 to the 10 trillion.
Yeah,
Um,
sure, done.
Okay, does that mean it is possible or impossible?
Possible.
Possible.
Okay, so, and you would say, okay, I stick to that possibility.
Are you asking me the same question again? The answer is
I'm
it's
asking
possible.
you
I don't
now.
know.
Okay, so would you believe that this is a rational explanation then by natural means because odds
Yes,
are not
because it doesn't
zero?
entail a contradiction. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good. We are done.
I believe you just got dismissed, Tom, but I could be wrong.
Just
You are done.